When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
The coffee beans are grinding and brewing at Canada's favorite staple coffee chain, Tim Hortons, but there's tension at Timmy's as franchisees are voicing their concerns over profitability and inflation. Just 4 years after Tim Hortons settled 2 lawsuits with franchisees, the relationship seems to be deteriorating once again. Franchise owners are feeling the pinch as their profits continue to get squeezed by rising food and supply costs, and franchisees are raising concerns over urgent questions in the food industry, such as who should absorb the effects of inflation. With more on Timmy's and what's brewing within the company, let's go to Susan Krashinsky Robertson, retailing reporter at the Globe and Mail. Susan, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, first things first, how is Tim Hortons doing? I mean, they just opened up their first store in Pakistan, people lining up for hours there. So, is Tim Hortons doing well right now?
Tim Hortons is definitely expanding. It's in growth mode, as you mentioned. They've opened restaurants in Pakistan. They've got a big presence in China. They're expanding all around the world, and they're going to keep expanding, by the way. Its parent company, which is called Restaurant Brands International, and it's a company that also owns chains like Burger King's or Popeye's Chicken. They've set a goal to expand their restaurants to about 40,000 restaurants around the world by about 2029. And that means Tim's is going to be a big part of that. It's going to keep growing all around the world. But yeah, it has been through sort of a turnaround phase in recent years. Its company has been working on what they've called a back to basics plan to try to drive more traffic to stores, to try to, create menu items that draw customers in. And it has been working. Sales have been increasing. But what some franchisees say is, sales may be up, but our profits are down. And that's actually borne out by what the parent company reported yesterday. They reported on their earnings for the fourth quarter of last year, and they, for the first time in a few years, they gave numbers on franchisee profitability, and they acknowledged that Tim Hortons franchises, the average franchise, used to make, the last time they reported numbers in 2018, the average franchise made about $320,000 a year in profit, and that's down to $220 now. So that's a big drop. And so they have actually acknowledged that profits have been falling, and for some Tim Hortons franchisees, they've started to raise concerns about that trend.
So, if I'm a franchise owner and I've seen my profits drop by a third, of course I'd be concerned. Susan, I guess I have to ask is how does this compare with other restaurant chains like this, like Tim Hortons? Because, I hear stories all the time, whether it's Subway or McDonald's, franchisees like to get upset over a whole bunch of reasons, right? But is there anything
That's
special
true.
here that where you think, hey, these franchise owners probably have a decent gripe?
It's such a difficult question to answer because, what the parent company would say is, look, profits are down across the industry. I don't think any of us knows a single restaurant owner, whether it's a fast food franchisee, whether it's a mom and pop shop down the street. I don't think any of us could find a restaurant owner who would not say the last couple of years have been brutal for their profits. Think about it. It's the same thing that you experience when you go to the grocery store. Food prices are up for all the reasons that we've all talked about for months now. The war in Ukraine has contributed to this. Rising commodity prices, weather events in California where we get so much of our produce have driven up, prices for some things. But prices for everything have gone up. And you've even seen packaged goods suppliers raising their prices to grocery stores. It's the same kind of conversation that's been happening for us as consumers with our groceries that happens with franchisees or restaurant owners and the supplies that they need to buy. Now, where the tensions come from is that, many franchisees, and this is not just at Tim Hortons, by the way, this is how a lot of franchise businesses work. They're required to buy their supplies, whether that's food, paper products, what have you. Many of those supplies they're required to buy from their parent company. And so what some franchisees have raised as a question is, has Tim Hortons raised the prices of their supplies by too much, even amid inflation? And what Tim Hortons would say back is, no, we've actually absorbed some of the cost of inflation, and our own profit margins on our supply chain are down because we've been trying to give some relief to our franchisees. So it's a little bit of, they said on this, who is absorbing the bulk of these costs, who should absorb the bulk of these costs is really at the heart of all of these tensions.
With Susan Krashinsky Robertson from the Globe and Mail talking about tension at Tim Hortons here. But Susan, let's look at this aspect, and that is this seems to be a problem that won't go away for Tim Hortons. I just remember, years ago, the donuts, they've changed it now. It's got to be frozen, and you have the franchisees up in arms. It seems like there's a history here of Tim Hortons and bad relationships with franchise owners. Is there something to be said on that Tim Hortons has a bad track record?
It's interesting. I mean, it depends on who you ask, right? So, yes, just about 4 years ago, they settled 2 lawsuits with a group of their franchisees. And this is the same group now that is making complaints. They're under a different name. They used to be called the Great White North Franchise Association. Now they're called the Alliance of Canadian Franchisees. But it's essentially a splinter group that represents what they say is the owners now of about 1/3 of the Tim Hortons locations in Canada. And yes, so they've had previous fights with Tim's. And so if you talk to that splinter group, they would say, absolutely, they've got a bad track record. If you talk to Tim Hortons, they would say, well, we have an advisory council of franchisees that we work with that is set up within the company and elected by the franchisees to represent them. This is a 19-seat advisory board, and franchisees across the country, they elect their regional representative to go to these meetings with the company, which they hold very regularly. And they would say, we consult with our franchisees, and the majority of our franchisees are not part of this group, and we don't have a bad track record. We do have a track record of some disgruntled franchisees. So it sort of depends on who you ask. But there's no question that there have been tensions in the past, and these tensions are rearing their head again. And it's something that the leadership of the company is going to need to deal with. So just yesterday, the parent company, again, Restaurant Brands, they promoted their chief operating officer to CEO. They've replaced their CEO. And in my interview with the new CEO, he called out franchisee profitability as a priority. He said that's absolutely got to be something that we focus on. So they've acknowledged that they need to work on this issue and that this is something that they're going to need to improve going forward.
Susan, last question. Has the coffee gotten better?
Tim Hortons would say it absolutely has. Actually, they have made a ton of investment in improving food and beverage quality. That's part of that back to basics plan I talked about a little while ago, that, when they found that traffic was flagging, they did all kinds of stuff. You might remember the fresh cracked eggs in the breakfast sandwiches. They've, made all kinds of changes to their products and their menu items to try to improve that quality while also keeping prices low. I think whether the coffee has gotten better, maybe it's just a matter of taste. But yeah, they would actually say they've made quite a few investments in that end of things.
Susan, always a pleasure talking to you about everything in this country that's happening, retail and restaurants. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Susan Krashinsky Robertson from the Globe and Mail.